Hello and welcome to my Module 6 project. I'm going to go over a program I wrote in C++ that asks the user for the scores of 5 judges, drops the highest and lowest scores, and calculates the average of the remaining scores. The purpose of this project is to use functions, so I'm going to go over the ways I've used some functions in this program. So here I've declared some function prototypes before my main function. This allows me to define my functions after the main function, otherwise my functions would need to be defined before they are called. It's generally good practice to use prototypes. You can see that I'm using two void functions, which are functions that don't return a value, and two double type functions that will be returning a variable of a double type when called. In my main function, I've set up some variables by declaring and initializing them to send them to get the judgeData function to be populated with a value. The program will run sequentially, so when the function is called, as in line 32, it's going to perform the operation outlined in the function definition on line 51. You can see in the body of this function that I'm asking the user for a judge's score. I'm using a while loop to validate the user input in case the user types a value that is not numeric or outside the requirements of a valid score, which is less than 0 or greater than 10. Once the function completes, the variable first will now assume the value indicated by the user, and the program will send the variable named second to the same function. Once the program gets the fifth score, it's going to now send the variables to the calcscore function. This function is going to receive the scores and create new variables that I've named 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to correspond with the names of the variables being sent from main. I've created a variable called average, and in the calculations of the average, I'm adding the sum of all 5, and then I'm calling the findLowest function to discover what the lowest score is. So you can see that I'm sending them here. This function begins on line 79. I'm using the alphabet as the numeric names are probably going to be a bit confusing to read at this point. So I define a variable called lowest, and I've initialized it to 10, which is the highest score a judge can give, before comparing each score to see whether it is lower than the variable lowest. So in line 83, if the variable a is lower or equal to the current value in variable lowest, which is 10, the variable lowest assumes the value of a. It continues to compare each variable to the current value held in variable lowest and updates the variable lowest when it finds a score that has a lower value. Once it compares all 5 scores, it returns the lowest value to be used in the function calcscore. You can see that in line 73, the calcscore function now calls the findHighest function to find the highest score. Going down to the highest function, findHighest function in line 108, I've again used letters to compare the values of each score to the variable highest, which is initialized to 0. This function will now return the highest score found to the calcscore function. The last job of the calcscore function is to display the to the user the average score. I do want to mention the importance of using the correct use of parentheses in this, otherwise you won't get the correct result. Okay, I'm going to run the program. Let's use simple values. I'll include some examples of what the program does for input validation. Okay, so as expected, the program correctly drops the highest and lowest and displays the average of the remaining scores. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll see you next module.